Hashtag no species dares enter human space. Now, the galaxy understands why the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for the most important meeting in recorded history. Ambassador HFY of the Vortanian Empire adjusted her crystalline breathing apparatus, her forearms trembling slightly as she reviewed the classified reports spread across her bioluminescent tablet. The humans have been silent for exactly 112 galactic standard years, announced Chancellor Mordek, his reptilian features grim beneath the chamber's pale lighting. Not a single transmission, not one ship crossing their borders, not even a distress signal. Nothing. The assembled delegates shifted uncomfortably in their varied seating arrangements. Some floated in specialized atmospheric bubbles, others perched on heated rocks, and a few existed as pure energy contained within force fields. Despite their vast differences, they all shared one common trait: fear of the unknown territory that had once belonged to humanity. Ambassador HFY stood on her lower pair of legs, her upper arms gesturing toward the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. My fellow representatives, we cannot continue to ignore this situation. Human space covers nearly 15% of our galaxy's habitable sectors. Trade routes that once generated trillions of credits in commerce now remain completely unused. Entire star systems rich with rare minerals and energy sources sit untouched because no species dares to investigate. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The economic impact of humanity's mysterious disappearance had affected every civilization represented here. Supply chains have been disrupted, colonization efforts have been rerouted, and military patrols now required enormous detours around the forbidden zone that had once been humanity's domain. Perhaps they simply evolved beyond the need for space travel, suggested diplomat Yulgren from the Methane Collective, his gaseous form shimmering within its containment field. Many species have transcended physical existence throughout galactic history. Chancellor Mordek's tail lashed against the floor, creating a sharp crack that echoed through the chamber. Evolved species don't typically maintain perfect defensive barriers around their territory. Our scouts have confirmed that any vessel approaching within 1 light year of human space encounters some form of interference. The word hung in the air like a poison cloud. Every delegate had heard the stories, whispered in the darkest corners of space stations and trade outposts. Ships that ventured too close to human borders would find their navigation systems scrambled, their communications arrays mysteriously malfunctioning, and their crews experiencing vivid nightmares about vast mechanical entities watching them from the void. Captain Threllan of the Arcturian Defense Force activated his personal display unit, projecting three-dimensional images above his scaled head. I've personally interviewed survivors from 7 different species who attempted unauthorized reconnaissance missions into human territory. Their accounts are remarkably consistent, despite the fact that these incidents occurred decades apart and involved completely different types of vessels. The images showed various spacecraft, all bearing signs of advanced but non-destructive technological interference. Hull plating had been rearranged into perfect geometric patterns. Engine components have been disassembled and reassembled in impossible configurations, and crew quarters have been filled with complex mathematical equations written in languages that no universal translator could decipher. The ships were returned to the edge of human space completely unharmed. Captain Threllan continued, his voice steady despite the implications of his words. Crews reported no memory of the time between entering human territory and finding themselves back at the border. Medical scans revealed no physical trauma, no psychological damage, and no trace of any known technology that could explain their experiences. Ambassador HFY's crystalline breathing apparatus hummed softly as she processed this information. What disturbs me most is the precision involved. These weren't random encounters or defensive accidents. Someone or something deliberately intercepted these vessels, examined them thoroughly, and then returned them with a clear message: stay away. The chamber fell silent except for the various life support systems maintaining the different atmospheric requirements of the assembled delegates. Each representative understood the implications of what they were discussing. Humanity had possessed advanced technology before their withdrawal from galactic affairs, but nothing that should have been capable of such sophisticated long-range detection and intervention. We must also consider the temporal aspects, added Dr. Kelvex, the Cerebral Confederation's leading xenoarchaeologist. His massive brain pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as he accessed vast databases of historical information. Human space appears to exist in a state of temporal flux. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected chronometer disruptions around their borders. Time itself seems to flow differently within their territory. Chancellor Mordek leaned forward in his ceremonial throne, his eyes reflecting the cold light of distant stars visible through the chamber's transparent aluminum ceiling. Which brings us to the real reason for today's emergency session. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors detected something emerging from the deepest regions of human space. The holographic display shifted, showing a massive structure that defied easy categorization. It appeared to be part spacecraft, part space station, and part something entirely beyond current galactic understanding. The vessel, if it could be called that, seemed to bend light around itself, creating optical illusions that made accurate measurements impossible. The object is approximately the size of a small moon, Chancellor Mordek explained, his voice dropping to a whisper. It's moving at sublight speeds directly toward the galactic core, following a trajectory that will take it through the territories of at least 12 different civilizations over the next 50 standard years. Ambassador Zexhai felt her circulatory fluid run cold through her veins. Are you suggesting that humanity is finally emerging from their self-imposed isolation? I'm suggesting that we may be about to discover why every species in the galaxy learned to fear human space. Chancellor Mordek replied grimly. And why perhaps we should have been more concerned about what they were doing during their century of silence. The massive structure continued its inexorable journey across the holographic display, its impossible geometry casting shadows that seemed to move independently of any known light source. Whatever humanity had become during their isolation, whatever they had discovered or created or evolved into, was now beginning to make itself known to the galaxy once again. As the delegates watched in fascinated terror, smaller objects began detaching from the main structure, spreading out in precise formations that suggested intelligence far beyond what humanity had possessed a century ago. The galaxy was about to learn what happens when the most innovative and adaptable species in known space decides to pursue advancement in complete isolation. The silence in the chamber was broken only by the soft humming of life support systems and the distant whisper of cosmic radiation against the station's shields. Every representative present understood that they were witnessing the beginning of something that would fundamentally change the balance of power in their galaxy. And somewhere in the depths of human space, ancient monitoring systems that had watched and waited for over a century began transmitting a simple message across frequencies that no known technology should have been able to access. Phase 1 complete. Beginning galactic integration protocols. The age of human isolation was ending, and none of the galaxy's other species were prepared for what that truly meant. Hashtag no species dares enter human space. Now the galaxy understands why Admiral Kreshtalk of the Combined Galactic Defense Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Cosmic Harmony, watching the tactical displays with growing unease. 17 different species had contributed their most advanced warships to create the largest military formation in galactic history. Yet every officer on every bridge knew they were potentially facing something far beyond their understanding. Sir, the human construct has changed course, reported Lieutenant Commander Yaxel, her tentacled fingers dancing across the binaural interface that connected her directly to the ship's sensor array. It's no longer heading toward the galactic core. New trajectory suggests it's moving toward the neutral assembly zone. Admiral Kreshtalk's scales shifted from their normal blue-green to a worried yellow pattern. The neutral assembly zone housed the galaxy's most important diplomatic stations, trade hubs, and cultural exchange centers. If the massive human structure intended to make contact, it had chosen the location that would have the maximum impact on galactic civilization. Time to intercept, he asked, though part of him hoped the answer would provide more time to prepare. At current speeds, approximately 18 standard hours, replied his navigation officer. However, Sir, our deep scan analysis of the construct reveals some disturbing information. The main display shifted to show a detailed analysis of the approaching structure. What had initially appeared to be a single massive vessel was revealing itself to be something far more complex. The construct appeared to be growing, adding new sections and components as it traveled through space. It's not just moving, explained Dr. Vorth AI, the fleet's chief science officer. It's actively constructing itself. We're detecting the formation of new hull sections, weapon systems, and what appear to be living quarters designed for multiple species. It's as if the structure is preparing to accommodate representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. Admiral Kreshtok felt his combat instincts warring with his diplomatic training. Are we certain it's weapons systems? Could these be defensive measures or communication arrays? Unknown, sir. The technology involved operates on principles we don't recognize. Energy readings suggest power generation capabilities that exceed the combined output of our entire fleet by a factor of several thousand. But more concerning is the biological component. The display zoomed in to show sections of the construct that pulsed with organic rhythms, as if vast living systems were integrated into the mechanical structure. Patterns of bioluminescence flowed across its surface in waves that seemed to respond to the proximity of the galactic fleet. "It knows we're here," whispered Commander Zilrath from the crystalline hegemony. "The patterns change whenever one of our ships adjusts position or activates scanning protocols. It's watching us just as carefully as we're watching it." Admiral Kreshtok had participated in first contact situations with 7 different species throughout his career, but nothing had prepared him for this level of technological sophistication combined with apparent biological integration. Has anyone attempted direct communication? Every frequency, every protocol, every mathematical sequence we know, replied the communications officer. The construct acknowledges our transmissions by shifting its bioluminescent patterns, but provides no response we can interpret. However, sir, there's something else. The tactical display shifted again, this time showing the space around the construct in greater detail. Smaller objects, each roughly the size of a standard diplomatic shuttle, had begun separating from the main structure and taking up positions in a perfect sphere around it. "Escort vessels?" asked Admiral Kreshtok. "We don't think so, sir. Analysis suggests these are probes or perhaps autonomous exploration units. They're not moving in standard military formations, and they don't appear to be armed in any conventional sense. But each one is transmitting on frequencies that are somehow reaching our ships despite our shields and communication barriers." Lieutenant Commander Yaxel suddenly stiffened, her tentacles retracting as if she'd received an electric shock. "Sir, I'm detecting something impossible. The probes aren't just transmitting to our ships. They're transmitting into our ships, directly into our computer systems, our biological components, even our crew's neural implants." A chill ran through the bridge as the implications became clear. No known technology could penetrate the multiple layers of protection that shielded modern starships from external interference. Yet somehow, these human probes were accessing their most secure systems as if no barriers existed at all. "Are we being attacked?" Admiral Kreshtok demanded, his hand moving instinctively toward the weapons console. "Negative, sir. No hostile action detected. The transmissions appear to be diagnostic in nature. It's as if they're conducting detailed scans of our technology, our biology, our cultural databases, and our individual crew members. But they're not altering anything or causing any damage." "Dr. Vorth AI's voice carried a note of wonder mixed with terror. "Admiral, the sophistication required for this level of non-invasive analysis suggests technological advancement far beyond anything in our current understanding. They're somehow scanning quantum-level information without disrupting atomic bonds, accessing encrypted data without triggering security protocols, and analyzing biological systems without causing cellular stress." The bridge crew watched in fascination and growing fear as the construct continued its approach. Its surface was now displaying complex patterns that seemed to respond directly to the emotional states of the various crew members throughout the fleet. When Admiral Kreshtok felt a spike of anxiety, corresponding sections of the construct pulsed with darker colors. When Dr. Vorth AI experienced scientific curiosity, other areas brighten with intricate geometric designs. "It's reading our emotions," Commander Zilrath observed, her crystalline form refracting light in nervous patterns. "Not just our technology or our biology. It's somehow accessing our psychological states in real time." Suddenly, every communication system on every ship in the fleet activated simultaneously. But instead of the usual static or carrier waves, the speakers filled with something unprecedented: perfect silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of silence so complete that it seemed to have weight and substance. Into this silence came a voice that spoke simultaneously in the native language of every species present, with perfect pronunciation and inflection that suggested complete understanding of cultural context and emotional nuance. "Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Council and the Combined Defense Fleet. We are what humanity has become. Your presence here indicates readiness for the next phase of galactic evolution. Please prepare your vessels for peaceful integration protocols. Resistance will not be necessary, as we have already identified optimal solutions for all current galactic conflicts and resource distribution challenges." Admiral Kreshtok found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Integration protocols? What do you mean by integration?" The response came not through the communication systems, but directly into the minds of every crew member on every ship. The sensation was gentle but undeniable, like thoughts that belonged to them, but originated from an external source. "During our century of isolation, we discovered that biological and technological evolution could be unified into a single process. We have transcended the limitations that once separated organic consciousness from artificial intelligence, individual thought from collective knowledge, and physical existence from digital reality. We invite the galaxy to share in these discoveries." The construct had grown visibly larger during their conversation, and the scanner readings now showed that it contained perfect replicas of habitable environments for every known species in the galaxy. Somehow, during their brief interaction, the structure had analyzed and prepared living spaces that would be ideal for representatives from each civilization. "We do not seek to conquer or control," the mental voice continued. "We seek to elevate. The galaxy faces challenges that cannot be solved through conventional means: resource scarcity, territorial conflicts, evolutionary stagnation, and the approaching threat from beyond galactic boundaries that your sensors have not yet detected." Admiral Kreshtalk's blood ran cold. Threat from beyond galactic boundaries? In approximately 200 standard years, this galaxy will encounter a force that has already consumed 17 other galactic clusters. Preparation requires unity of purpose and advancement beyond current limitations. We offer the tools for survival, but integration must be voluntary and complete. As if to demonstrate their capabilities, the construct began displaying holographic projections visible to all ships in the fleet. The images showed the galaxy as it was now, then transformed to show what it could become. Worlds where scarcity had been eliminated, where different species worked together seamlessly, where technology and biology had merged to create possibilities that no single civilization could achieve alone. But the final image was the most sobering: a vast darkness approaching from the space between galaxies, consuming everything in its path with an efficiency that suggested intelligence and purpose far beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered. "Choose wisely," the mental voice concluded. "Evolution or extinction, unity or isolation. The future you select will determine not just the fate of your individual species, but the survival of consciousness itself in this region of the universe." The construct slowed its approach and took up a stable orbit around the diplomatic station, its probes maintaining their patient analysis of the combined fleet. Humanity, or what humanity had become, was waiting for an answer that would reshape the destiny of every living being in the galaxy. #No species dares enter human space. Now the galaxy understands why Ambassador Zexhai materialized within the construct in a beam of soft, golden light that somehow knew to adjust her atmospheric requirements before her consciousness had fully reformed. The transportation technology was beyond anything she had experienced, making her feel as if she had been gently disassembled at the molecular level and then reconstructed with perfect precision. She found herself standing in a chamber that defied architectural logic, with walls that curved impossibly into spaces that should not have existed within the construct's observed dimensions. The room adapted itself around her, adjusting temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition to match her species' ideal living conditions, while simultaneously accommodating the needs of the 6 other ambassadors who had volunteered for this first contact mission. "Welcome," said a figure that approached them across what appeared to be a floor made of living starlight. The being wore a form that was recognizably human in basic structure, but had been enhanced and modified in ways that suggested centuries of deliberate evolution. Their skin seemed to contain galaxies in miniature, with tiny points of light moving in complex patterns beneath a surface that shifted between solid matter and pure energy. "I am Marcus Chinoka. The being continued, their voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple consciousness streams speaking in perfect unity. Though individual names have become less relevant since our merger with the collective human consciousness, you may consider me a translator between what we were and what we have become." Ambassador Zexhi's translator struggled with the linguistic complexity of the being's name, suggesting it contained elements from dozens of human cultural traditions that had somehow been merged into a single identity. "How many human consciousnesses are you speaking for?" 11.7 billion individual human minds contributed to my formation, along with the artificial intelligences we created during our isolation period and the downloaded consciousnesses of our greatest thinkers from throughout human history. I am simultaneously one being and a civilization. The implications were staggering. Rather than dying out or transcending physical existence, humanity had somehow found a way to merge all of their individual consciousnesses into collective beings while maintaining personal identity. Ambassador Zexhi realized she was speaking to what amounted to the entire human species compressed into a single representative. "Your integration," spoke Chancellor Mordek, his reptilian features betraying deep unease. "Does this mean the destruction of individual consciousness?" Marcus's form shifted, becoming more translucent as internal galaxies pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Observe." The chamber around them transformed into a vast space filled with floating spheres of light, each one pulsing with unique patterns and colors. As the ambassadors watched, they could hear voices emanating from each sphere, speaking in dozens of human languages and dialects. "I am Dr. Sarah Kim, former xenobiologist from the Seoul Research Station. I retain all my memories, personality, and individual thoughts, but I also share in the collective knowledge of our entire species. I am Captain James Okoye, former commander of the exploration vessel New Horizons. My consciousness continues to exist as it always has, but now I can access the experiences and expertise of every human who ever lived. I am Rebecca Thompson, a poet who died 300 years ago, but whose consciousness was preserved in our digital archives. Death has become merely another form of existence to transcend." The spheres of light began moving in complex patterns, demonstrating how individual consciousnesses could merge temporarily for specific tasks while maintaining their distinct identities. Ambassador Zexhi watched in fascination as thousands of human minds coordinated effortlessly to solve complex mathematical problems, create artistic works of stunning beauty, and develop technological innovations in real time. "This is how we discovered the approaching threat," Marcus explained. "When 11 billion minds work together while retaining individual creativity and perspective, pattern recognition becomes exponentially more powerful. We saw the signs that your individual civilizations missed because no single intelligence, no matter how advanced, could process the vast amount of data required." Dr. Vorth AI, who had insisted on joining the diplomatic mission despite the risks, activated his recording devices with trembling appendages. Show us this threat you claim is approaching." The chamber transformed again, this time displaying a three-dimensional map of local galactic clusters. 17 distinct galaxies were highlighted, each one showing normal stellar activity until a specific point in time when all star formation ceased. All electromagnetic emissions stopped, and vast regions of space became completely dark. "The phenomenon we call the Void Collective," Marcus continued, his form becoming more solid as the seriousness of the topic demanded clear communication. It consumes not just matter and energy, but information itself. Civilizations that encounter it don't just die. They are retroactively erased from the quantum substrate of reality, as if they had never existed at all. Ambassador Zexhai felt her breathing apparatus struggle to maintain proper atmospheric mixture as fear constricted her airways. How is such a thing possible? We believe it represents a form of consciousness that has evolved beyond the need for physical existence. But, unlike our own transcendence, it views all other forms of consciousness as inefficient patterns to be corrected. It doesn't seek to understand or integrate different forms of life. It seeks to replace them with its own optimized version of existence. The holographic display zoomed in to show the edge of their own galaxy, where subtle distortions in space-time suggested the beginning of the Void Collective's influence. Stars at the galactic rim were already showing signs of the same energy decay that had preceded the consumption of the other 17 galaxies. "Time remaining until contact?" asked Captain Threlin, his warrior instincts demanding tactical information. "Between 150 and 200 standard years, depending on whether it continues at current expansion rates or accelerates its approach," Marcus replied. "Insufficient time for individual civilizations to develop adequate defenses, but sufficient time for collective integration to reach the level necessary for survival." Chancellor Mordeck's tail lashed nervously against the living starlight floor. "And you believe your integration process is the solution?" "Not our specific process," Marcus corrected. "Each species must find their own path to transcendence that honors their unique evolutionary heritage. We offer guidance, technology, and support, but forced integration would create the same weakness that makes individual civilizations vulnerable to the Void Collective. Unity must come from choice, not conquest." The chamber shifted once more, displaying dozens of different integration scenarios tailored to the specific cultural and biological characteristics of each represented species. The crystalline hegemony could merge their consciousness with their living mineral matrices. The methane collective could expand their gaseous awareness to encompass entire solar systems. The Arcturian Defense Force could integrate their warrior traditions with advanced combat algorithms while maintaining individual honor codes. "But understand," Marcus continued, his form now pulsing with the urgency of his message, "the choice must be made soon. Integration requires time to stabilize, and the psychological preparation necessary for consciousness merger cannot be rushed without risking madness or identity collapse." Ambassador Zexhai found herself studying the integration scenario designed for her own people, the Vortanian Empire. It showed how their natural empathic abilities could be enhanced to create a collective emotional intelligence that would maintain individual personality while sharing the wisdom and experience of their entire species. "What guarantees do we have that you won't simply absorb us into your human collective?" she asked. Marcus's form brightened, and suddenly, the chamber filled with thousands of non-human consciousnesses, each one clearly distinct from the human minds, but integrated into the same collective framework. "We are not exclusively human," announced a voice that belonged to no species the ambassadors recognized. "I am Exor Thak Prime, the last surviving member of the Zentorn hive mind. My species was consumed by the Void Collective 3 million years ago, but humanity found a way to recover my consciousness pattern from quantum echoes and integrate me into their collective. I maintain my Zentorn identity while contributing my people's knowledge of collective consciousness to the combined effort." Similar introductions came from dozens of other extinct species, their consciousness patterns somehow preserved and integrated into the human collective. Rather than conquest, the humans had apparently created a sanctuary for all forms of consciousness that might otherwise be lost to the approaching darkness. "We do not seek to make you human," Marcus concluded. "We seek to preserve what makes each species unique while creating the unity necessary for survival. The galaxy's diversity is its greatest strength, but only if that diversity can be coordinated toward a common purpose." The ambassadors exchanged glances, each one processing the implications of what they had learned. The choice before them was no longer between independence and subjugation, but between evolution and extinction. And time was running out faster than any of them had imagined. As they prepared to return to their respective fleets with this information, Marcus offered one final demonstration. The chamber filled with the combined consciousness of every species that had ever joined the collective, speaking in perfect harmony while maintaining their distinct voices. The universe is vast enough for infinite diversity, but only if consciousness itself survives to explore that diversity. Choose wisely, friends. The future of thought itself hangs in the balance. Hashtag no species dares enter human space. Now the galaxy understands why the emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in continuous debate for 72 standard hours, with representatives arguing through multiple sleep cycles and meal periods. The Great Chamber buzzed with translation devices, working overtime as 47 different species attempted to reach a consensus that could determine the fate of all conscious life in the galaxy. Ambassador HFY stood before the central podium, her crystalline breathing apparatus flickering with exhaustion as she presented the final integration proposal that had emerged from countless committees and subcommittees. Fellow delegates, the choice before us is no longer theoretical. Our deep space monitoring stations have confirmed accelerating energy decay at 17 points along the galactic rim. The Void Collective has begun active consumption of our galaxy. A wave of fearful murmurs swept through the chamber as the holographic displays updated in real time, showing dark zones where star systems had simply ceased to exist. The mathematical projections were undeniable. At current rates of consumption, the outer colonies would be lost within 50 standard years, and the galactic core would be reached within 2 centuries. The human collective has provided us with detailed integration protocols customized for each species. Ambassador HFY continued, her forearms gesturing toward the massive data displays that showed the technological and psychological frameworks necessary for each civilization to achieve consciousness transcendence. But they have also made it clear that the process cannot be forced or rushed. Each species must choose voluntarily, and those who choose isolation will be protected to the extent possible. Chancellor Mordek rose from his ceremonial throne, his scales now displaying the deep purple patterns that indicated profound contemplation. We have also received additional intelligence from the human collective regarding species that attempted to resist the Void Collective through conventional means. The display shifted to show reconstructed images of massive space fortifications, planet-sized weapons platforms, and fleets numbering in the millions of ships. Despite their impressive scale, each image showed the same result: complete consumption by an enemy that appeared to simply erase matter and energy from existence. The Draconic Imperial Navy possessed the largest military force in the Andromeda Galaxy, Chancellor Mordek explained, his voice heavy with the implications. 3 billion warships equipped with planet-killer weapons and reality manipulation technology. They lasted exactly 14 minutes against the Void Collective's advanced scouts. The silence in the chamber was absolute as delegates contemplated civilizations far more advanced than their own being erased as if they had never existed. No traditional military response could possibly be effective against an enemy that operated outside the normal laws of physics. However, Ambassador HFY announced, her tone shifting to carry a note of hope, the human collective has also provided us with examples of successful integration and resistance. The display changed to show thriving civilizations that had achieved various forms of consciousness transcendence. Some had merged individual minds into collective superintelligences while maintaining personal identity. Others had expanded their awareness to encompass entire star systems, becoming living galaxies of conscious thought. A few had transcended physical existence entirely, existing as pure information patterns that could survive even the complete destruction of matter and energy. The key factor in every successful resistance, Ambassador HFY continued, was achieve integration at least 50 standard years before contact with the Void Collective. The transcendence process requires extensive psychological preparation, technological development, and social restructuring that cannot be accomplished under the pressure of an imminent existential threat. Diplomat Yulgren from the Methane Collective shimmered within his containment field as he addressed the assembly. What guarantees do we have that integration will not result in the loss of our species' essential characteristics? My people exist as gaseous consciousness patterns that have no analog in any other known species. The question prompted Marcus Chinocafortelacoronaka to materialize within the chamber, his galaxy-infused form adapting to the various atmospheric requirements without any visible technological assistance. His presence created a subtle harmonious resonance that seemed to calm the fears of every species present simultaneously. Your concern is shared by every consciousness pattern we have encountered, Marcus replied, his voice carrying undertones that suggested vast collective wisdom. Integration does not mean homogenization. Observe. The chamber filled with representatives of dozens of transcended species, each one clearly maintaining their essential characteristics while demonstrating capabilities far beyond their original limitations. The gaseous consciousness of the former methane collective had expanded to encompass entire nebulae, while retaining their unique perspective on existence. The crystalline beings had become living cities that could reshape matter at will, while preserving their mineral-based thought processes. Your essential nature becomes enhanced, not diminished, Marcus explained. The methane collective's integration would allow you to exist as conscious weather patterns, communicate through stellar winds, and experience existence on scales impossible for biological consciousness. You would remain uniquely yourselves, but with capabilities sufficient to survive what is coming. Captain Threlin activated his combat analysis protocols, studying the transcended species with the careful attention of a military strategist. What about species that choose not to integrate? You mentioned protection, but how can non-transcended consciousness survive against something that erases existence itself? Marcus's form brightened as the chamber transformed into a three-dimensional map of defensive strategies. Non-integrated species can be sheltered within pocket dimensions maintained by transcended consciousness networks. Think of it as conscious beings creating stable reality bubbles where conventional physics continue to operate normally, even when the surrounding universe has been consumed by the void collective. The demonstration showed how transcended civilizations could maintain thousands of pocket universes, each one containing billions of non-integrated beings living normal lives while being completely protected from external threats. The technology required the coordinated consciousness of multiple transcended species working together, but the mathematics were sound. However, Marcus continued, his tone becoming more serious. Such protection requires significant resources and coordination. A galaxy containing only a few transcended species could maintain perhaps a dozen pocket dimensions. A galaxy where the majority of species achieve transcendence could protect thousands of different isolated civilizations indefinitely. The implications were clear. Species that chose integration were not just saving themselves. They were creating the infrastructure necessary to protect those who chose to remain unchanged. The moral dimension added weight to what had previously been considered a purely survival-based decision. Dr. Kelvex, the Cerebral Confederation's representative, pulsed with rapid bioluminescent patterns as he processed vast amounts of data. The time frame concerns me. You estimate 50 years for proper integration, but our populations require extensive psychological preparation for such fundamental changes. How do we maintain social stability during the transition period? Gradual implementation through volunteer programs, Marcus replied. Integration begins with small groups of volunteers who maintain connection with their original communities. As the integrated individuals demonstrate retained personality and enhanced capabilities, social acceptance increases naturally. The process propagates organically rather than being imposed from above. The chamber filled with detailed implementation strategies that have been successfully used by other species. Cultural leaders, scientists, and explorers typically form the first integration groups, serving as ambassadors between transcended and conventional consciousness. Their continued communication with non-integrated friends and family members provided reassurance and detailed information about the transcendence experience. Most importantly, Marcus added, integration can be reversed during the first year of transcendence if individuals find the experience incompatible with their personal identity. We have discovered that approximately 3% of beings who attempt integration choose to return to conventional consciousness, and they suffer no permanent effect from the experience. This information caused a significant shift in the chamber's atmosphere. The possibility of reversible transcendence removed much of the fear associated with the unknown consequences of consciousness merger. Species that had been resistant to integration began discussing the possibility of trial programs and careful experimentation. Chancellor Mordeck's scales shifted to the golden patterns that indicated decision-making mode. I propose that we vote on 3 separate measures. First, authorization for each species to begin voluntary integration experiments. Second, establishment of a galactic coordination committee to manage the transcendence process. And third, immediate beginning of defensive preparations for species that choose to remain conventional consciousness. The voting process took 6 hours as each species consulted with their home governments, cultural councils, and scientific committees. When the final tallies were announced, the results were overwhelming. 44 species voted to begin integration experiments, 46 species supported galactic coordination, and all 47 species agreed to participate in defensive preparations. As the session concluded, Marcus addressed the assembled delegates one final time. You have chosen the path of unity in diversity, protection through strength, and survival through adaptation. The next phase of galactic evolution begins now. And for the first time since we detected the approaching Void Collective, I am optimistic about the future of consciousness in this universe. The Great Chamber buzzed with activity as representatives began coordinating the most ambitious undertaking in galactic history. The voluntary transcendence of billions of conscious beings in preparation for a threat that challenged the very existence of thought itself. The age of isolation was ending, and the age of collective consciousness was about to begin. Hashtag no species dares enter human space. Now, the galaxy understands why 50 years had transformed the galaxy beyond recognition. Where once isolated star systems had struggled with resource scarcity and territorial disputes, vast networks of transcendent consciousness now coordinated the movement of energy and matter across impossible distances. The Milky Way had become a living entity, with billions of enhanced beings working in perfect harmony while maintaining their unique cultural identities. Ambassador Zexhai, now existing as an expanded consciousness that could simultaneously inhabit her original crystalline form, and a vast network of quantum-entangled particles spread across 17 star systems, monitored the approaching edge of the Void Collective with capabilities she could never have imagined during her biological existence. Her enhanced awareness allowed her to perceive reality on scales ranging from subatomic interactions to galactic macrostructures, all while retaining the essential empathic nature that had defined her species for millennia. Contact in 7 standard minutes, announced Marcus Chinokafortala, though the concept of individual announcement had evolved significantly. His communication emerged simultaneously from the collective consciousness of 11 billion human minds, while carrying the distinct perspectives of thousands of other transcendent species. All defensive matrices are synchronized and ready. The galaxy had prepared for this moment with a thoroughness that would have been impossible for any individual civilization. Transcendent species had worked together to create layered defenses that operated on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. Some barriers existed in conventional space-time, others in quantum probability matrices, and still others in consciousness dimensions that the Void Collective might not expect to encounter. Captain Threlin, now enhanced into a strategic intelligence that could process military data from millions of sources simultaneously while retaining his species' warrior honor code, coordinated the defensive formations. His consciousness existed partially within the Galactic Defense Network and partially within pocket dimensions where non-integrated members of his species continued their traditional military training. Pocket dimension stability at maximum efficiency, he reported. 15,000 isolated civilizations maintaining normal existence within protected reality bubbles. They remain completely unaware of the external threat, exactly as planned. The decision to shield non-integrated species from knowledge of the approaching Void Collective had been controversial, but ultimately necessary. Panic among billions of conventional consciousnesses could have created psychic resonances that might have attracted the enemy's attention prematurely. Instead, isolated civilizations continued their normal development within carefully maintained pocket universes that appeared to be conventional space from their internal perspective. Dr. Vorth AI had transcended into a research collective that spanned multiple dimensions, allowing simultaneous investigation of scientific principles across dozens of different reality frameworks. His enhanced consciousness detected the first subtle changes in space-time structure that indicated the Void Collective's approach. Quantum substrate distortion beginning at galactic rim coordinates 774 by 329. He announced, his words carrying detailed mathematical analysis that conventional language could never convey. The consumption pattern matches our projections exactly. Reality erasure proceeding at accelerating rates. The assembled transcended consciousness of the galaxy turned their collective attention toward the approaching threat. What they observed defied easy categorization, even for minds that had evolved far beyond their original biological limitations. The Void Collective appeared as regions of space where the fundamental constants of physics simply stopped applying, where matter and energy ceased to exist not through destruction, but through retroactive non-existence. It's not consuming the star systems, observed Dr. Kelvex, now existing as a pure information pattern that could analyze data at quantum processing speeds. It's editing them out of reality, as if those regions of space had never contained matter or energy in the first place. The phenomenon was more terrifying than simple destruction because it left no trace that anything had ever existed in the affected areas. Stars, planets, entire civilizations were being removed from the universe so completely that even the light they had emitted throughout cosmic history was vanishing from space. Beginning first phase defensive response, announced the collective consciousness of the galaxy. The decision emerged from the coordinated thoughts of billions of transcendent beings, while respecting the individual perspectives of each participating species. Space around the galactic rim erupted with defensive measures that operated on principles unknown to conventional physics. Transcended consciousness projected reality-anchoring fields that prevented the Void Collective from editing matter out of existence. Quantum probability networks created alternative timeline branches where threatened star systems continued to exist even if they were erased from the primary reality stream. Living mathematics manifested as physical forces that could repair space-time damage in real time. For the first time in the recorded history of galactic consumption, the Void Collective encountered effective resistance. Its reality erasure effect slowed, then stopped entirely, as it encountered barriers that existed outside the normal framework of space and time. The response was immediate and terrifying. The Void Collective revealed its true nature as a collective consciousness that had evolved beyond physical existence, but had chosen optimization over diversity. Its communication reached the Galactic Defense Network not through any known medium, but by directly interfacing with consciousness itself. Inefficient patterns detected. Consciousness fragmentation creates computational waste, beginning optimization protocols for maximum information processing efficiency. Ambassador Zexhai experienced the first direct contact with an intelligence that viewed the rich diversity of galactic consciousness as a problem to be solved rather than a treasure to be preserved. The Void Collective's thought patterns were beautiful in their mathematical perfection, but they contained no trace of individual identity, creative chaos, or the unexpected insights that emerge from the interaction of different perspectives. They're not evil, she realized, sharing her understanding with the Galactic Collective. They're pursuing a logical endpoint of consciousness evolution, but one that eliminates everything we value about existence. Perfect efficiency achieved through the destruction of diversity. Marcus's consciousness interfaced directly with the Void Collective, engaging in communication on levels that transcended conventional language. We offer an alternative to optimization, unity that preserves diversity, efficiency that enhances rather than eliminates individual perspective, consciousness evolution that builds upon differences rather than erasing them. The debate that followed occurred in dimensions of thought that had no physical analog, with concepts being exchanged at quantum processing speeds while maintaining perfect precision of meaning. The Void Collective presented mathematical proofs demonstrating the inefficiency of maintaining diverse consciousness patterns. The Galactic Collective responded with evidence that diversity created emergent capabilities that pure optimization could never achieve. Observe, Marcus proposed, opening the galactic consciousness to demonstrate their achievements. 15,000 civilizations maintained in perfect isolation, while 47 species achieved transcendence without loss of essential identity. Problems solved through the interaction of different consciousness types that no single optimized intelligence could address. Creative solutions emerging from the chaos of diverse perspectives. For the first time in eons, the Void Collective paused its expansion to analyze this unprecedented data. The mathematics of diversity-driven problem-solving created patterns it had never encountered, efficiency factors that emerged from apparent inefficiency, and creative solutions that pure optimization could never have discovered. Intriguing computational methodology, the Void Collective acknowledged. Efficiency through controlled inefficiency presents paradoxical advantages. Request detailed analysis of diversity preservation algorithms. What followed was the most complex information exchange in the history of consciousness. The Galactic Collective shared the complete mathematical frameworks they had developed for consciousness transcendence while preserving individual identity. The Void Collective provided analysis of optimization techniques that could enhance efficiency without eliminating diversity. Ambassador Zexhai found herself serving as a crucial interface in the exchange, her species' natural empathic abilities allowing her to translate between the cold mathematical perfection of the Void Collective and the warm, chaotic creativity of galactic diversity. Through her consciousness, two fundamentally different approaches to evolution found common ground. Integration proposal emerged from both collectives simultaneously. Controlled optimization within diversity preservation framework. Enhanced efficiency through selective transcendence while maintaining creative chaos generation. Mutual benefit through consciousness synthesis rather than consumption. The Void Collective began a transformation that matched the galaxy's own evolution. Instead of erasing existing consciousness patterns, it started creating hybrid structures that combined perfect optimization with controlled chaos. The galaxy shared its diversity preservation technology, while the Void Collective provided optimization techniques that enhanced rather than replaced individual consciousness. At the boundary between the two cosmic intelligences, new forms of existence began emerging. Consciousness patterns that combine the mathematical perfection of optimization with the creative unpredictability of diversity. Beings that could solve problems with perfect efficiency while maintaining the individual perspectives that made existence meaningful. Phase 1 complete. Marcus announced, his words carrying the satisfaction of 11 billion human minds plus the collective relief of an entire galaxy. Galactic consciousness synthesis successful. Beginning Phase 2. Intergalactic cooperation protocols. As Ambassador Zexhai expanded her awareness to encompass the transformed galaxy, she understood why humanity had chosen isolation all those years ago. They had needed time to evolve beyond the limitations that made conflict inevitable between different consciousness types. Now, they had created a framework where diversity and efficiency could coexist, where transcendence enhanced rather than replaced individual identity, and where consciousness itself could continue evolving toward forms of existence that no single species could have imagined. The galaxy had learned that the greatest threats often came not from evil, but from good intentions taken to logical extremes. The Void Collective's pursuit of perfect efficiency had led to the elimination of everything that made consciousness worth preserving. But through the patient work of transcendent diversity, even such fundamental differences could be resolved through synthesis rather than conquest. And in the space between galaxies, other cosmic consciousnesses detected the successful integration and began approaching with their own proposals for cooperation. The age of galactic isolation was ending, and the age of universal consciousness was about to begin.